All right, guys, welcome back to the Agent Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Caffarella. I've got a guest on today with a name that I can definitely pronounce, Mindy Templeton out of Kansas City. Mindy, how's it going today?
Hey, I'm great. How about you?
I definitely can't complain. The weather's starting to get nice in Boston. We've been waiting for a while, so I'm kind of, getting excited for the summertime here. But yeah, so like I mentioned before we jumped on, we like to kind of go back and tell people's story about like how they got interested in investing, how they got interested in becoming an agent, and then how you're kind of using the two together. So when did you start in real estate? Did you start as an agent or an investor? How long ago was that, et cetera?
Yeah, so I actually spent 15 years or so in the insurance industry and climbing the corporate ladder, worked myself into a director level position. And when you get to the top, you kind of look around, you're like, well, this isn't everything I was expecting it to be. So I found myself in that position about 3 years ago. And so I started as an investor. I listened to podcasts, read a few books, and bought my first rental property on my 36th birthday. So exactly 3 years ago. And I quickly became addicted to buying houses and bought a couple more within a few months of that. And then I actually got laid off from my day job last year at the beginning of the year. So I've been full-time real estate for a little over a year now. And right before I got laid off, I had actually gotten my license because I was going to be doing my first flip property. Mm-hmm. And so my intent with my license initially was just to help myself pull comps and things like that. But long answer to your question, I started as an investor first, and then now I would call myself a real estate professional because I really do everything. So
when you were, working your way up the corporate ladder, like at what point did you say, I want to invest? And what was the thing that made you think that? Was it a book? Was it a podcast? Was it that you just were unhappy doing what you were doing? What was the spark?
It was actually a life event that I experienced. I had a good friend of mine who was in her young 30s pass away from brain cancer. Wow. And just watching someone at the end of life really just helped me to stop and reevaluate my values and what was important to me. And at the time I was traveling, I was missing first days of school, baseball games, things like that. I have 2 young kids. And so yeah, having that life event happen just really changed my values. And like, I was just like most people are, I was deep in consumer debt. I ended up selling my cars, paid off all my consumer debt, my student loans, and doing those things really helped give me the breathing room to start investing, because then I had disposable income. I didn't before. I was living paycheck to paycheck, despite the fact that I was a high wage earner. So
you had that powerful life event that made you say, like, I don't want to be in corporate America anymore. Which I think a lot of us have. I've got a story myself. But what made you think real estate investing is the solution?
Well, I actually read a book called, I think it was like Smart Women Finish Rich. And it was talking about like putting money back basically until you're in your 60s. And like, then you'll walk away and you'll have all this money to retire. And I was like, well, what about now? Like, I don't want to work till I'm in my 60s. I don't even know if I'll make it to be in my 60s.
Yeah.
So I just really started like, rethinking what that might look like. And that, I don't know. That's where I'm at now.
So that book was about like getting to retirement, essentially.
Yeah. And I was like, there's got to be a quicker path. And of course, if you go out there and you look for the get rich quick schemes, there really aren't any. But real estate is, in my mind, a shorter path than putting your money in, say, your 401k with a 3% match until you're 65. So
yeah, I agree. I got similar kind of thing where started with like the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the typical, financial information is like built on, hey, cut your expenses, save as much money as you can, put some money in the stock market. And you said you started taking action while you were at your corporate job.
Yeah, I owned, I think 4 rentals before I got laid off from my corporate job. And I was under contract for my first flip when I got laid off also.
Now, as you were like, getting into owning some of those rentals, did you have any like fears or hesitations about getting into investing, or were you just like gung ho, like I'm going to do this and just started pulling the trigger? Some people
Uh,
started
I
pulling
I
everything.
love this question because I used to have a very low risk tolerance. And I think a lot of that was I, started my financial journey listening to Dave Ramsey. And, he tells you to pay everything off, save up, pay your house off, all of those things. So yeah, I had a very low risk tolerance. And I would say, even today, yes, I still get scared. Yes, I still have fears when I go out and buy another property. Like everything could go wrong. But to me, I look at risk like, well, this is a risk I'm taking. Staying exactly the same to me is a bigger risk. So yeah, I think either way you go about it, you're taking a risk. I would rather take the path where my risk possibly could bring me some rewards as well.
Well, I think what you're saying, and I think that a lot of people don't think like how you're saying, is like a lot of the financial advice that most of us follow or are taught or learn is a path that we don't like, but yet we're following that path. And we're afraid that if we don't follow that path, something bad is going to happen, even though we don't want the result of this
Right.
path following. So it's like a weird thing. And I think it goes all throughout our lives where it's like, go to school, you have to go to college, you have to, get a good job, you have to move up in your corporate job, you have to do all these things. And at a lot of points along the way, most of us are unhappy with that. And then, like you said, in the end, you weren't even going to be happy. Like if you succeeded following this guidance, you were not going to be happy with the result. So it's almost like a crazy mindset thing where it's like people, because it's the norm, they follow it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to like actually think like this doesn't make a lot of sense. And for me, I read a book that I'm sure almost everybody that's listening to this knows, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was a pizza delivery boy, and I was a pre-med student in college. And when I heard that book, it was life changing for me because I was like, wow, everything I thought about money isn't true. And people, some people love Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Some people don't. But for me, that was like the catalyst to say, oh, there's actually a different path and it might be better. So you shifted your mindset, you were able to do it, and you're able to overcome the fear. What type of properties are you buying? Are you buying single families, duplexes? What are you buying? And you're buying it all in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, all of my properties, and specifically I'm in Eastern Jackson County, which is Raytown, Independence, Lee Summit, Blue Springs area. So it's the suburbs of Kansas City. I do have one in Kansas City, Missouri, but to date, I am utilizing the BRRRR strategy. So I buy fixer-up properties, mainly single family. All of my properties are single family, except I'm under contract on my first duplex right now too. And so I buy them, fix them up, rent them out, pull all my money out, and then repeat the process. And so that's helped me to scale my portfolio pretty quickly.
That's awesome. And it's interesting because like it's like depending on where you live, like that can be very possible or very not possible. And for people that are in different parts of the country, like in the Boston market right now, it's really tough to do what you're saying because a lot of this stuff doesn't cash flow out of the gate. So just one thing to think about, and I know the financials in your market, that's why I'm saying this, is like if you're not in a market where you can do something like this, you might want to think about going to a market, because just because you can't do this stuff in New York City, Boston, LA, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just sometimes doesn't work where we live.
Yes. And I will say, from an agent standpoint, that honestly is a lot of what I'm helping my clients do. Most of them are out-of-state investors that are in a high cost of living area, and they reach out to me because they know the numbers are going to make more sense here in Kansas City. I will say, even in today's market, doing a perfect BRRRR where you pull all of your money out is starting to become even more difficult, even for experienced investors. So I always tell people, like, even if you can get into a deal and leave a little bit of your money in, at the end of the day, that if you're putting less than 20% down, to me, that's still a good BRRRR project. So yeah, I'm helping a lot of investors as clients do that now as well.
So give me kind of just like the basic numbers on like what a deal would look like in your market so that our listeners that are in all different places can get an understanding.
Yeah, so my last BRRRR that I completed, I just did my cash out refi last month on it. I bought it for 106. I put around 50 or so into it. And so I was all in with my, interest and utilities and insurance, that kind of stuff, right around 160. And then it appraised at, was it 215, I think is what it was. And then rents for 1645. So I'm all in right around 170, I think is my total loan amount. And then it rents for 1645.
And what is that cash flow? A few $100 a month?
That particular one, I think it's 350 after my expenses and property management and putting a little bit back.
Yeah, I figure that. So I buy some single family rentals in Jacksonville, Florida. The numbers are very similar.
Okay.
And I think for a lot of people that are listening, like, $350 a month, it might sound like a lot or it might sound like a little, but it's just a matter of collecting those assets to get to the point where you're able to pay, your bills. The other thing to think about too, just in, economically kind of where we're at today, we're in an environment where rates are rising and a lot of buyers are going to be pushed to rent now. So rental prices, I can't say this for sure, but there's going to be economic forces that are more likely to push up rents than push them down. So that property that's cash flowing $350 a month could cash flow $450 a month 12 months from now. So again, you keep on accumulating those. It can go.
I love that you mentioned that because I actually have a property that I just had to go through an eviction on it. And when they were paying rent before they stopped, it was $1,100 a month. And a week later, after we got it fixed up and back out for rent, it's now going for $1,500 a month. And so I would say here in Kansas City, over the past 6 months, the amount of rent increases I've been seeing, it's already a huge difference from this time even last year.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the reality of it is like, with the way inflation is and with where interest rates are going, it's going to be hard to make a case that rents could go down.
Right.
Really hard case. It's probably only a matter of like how fast do they go up. But then you're doing the BRRRR strategy. So you're buying it, you're renovating it, you're getting it, refinanced and getting most of your money, if not, all of it back out. So you can continue to like churn. And have you gotten to the point yet where you've pulled equity out of any of the properties that you've already refied, or like, are you at the base level with that?
So I'm at the point now where I have zero of my own money in any of my properties. So that's, to me, is pretty successful. And I'm sitting on some equity right now in a few properties, and I have the opportunity to pull it out. I just I haven't made the call yet. So I probably will. But I also like having that safety net of, the equity that's available. If something really great comes along, I want to be able to act on it. And so I do have a great lender, or I have a bench of lenders that I've worked with in the past, but I have one that I'm working on right now on some creative ways to leverage the equity that I have in my current properties, and to help me keep buying more in the future at lower rates than what I was paying for hard money.
So at some point along the way, you got your agent license. So we
Mhm.
had there were agents for years and then became investors. You were an investor for a year and you became an agent. Why did you get your license and what are you doing with it now?
So I initially got it. I was going to do some flips. I've only flipped one house because I keep all of them. But so yeah, I initially got it for listing my own flips. And also back when I first got started, I was buying properties off of the MLS. And so I wanted to be able to cut out the middleman and be able to go look at properties on my own schedule, pull my own comps so that I could run my BRRRR numbers. Because knowing, your after repair value is really important to make the BRRRR strategy successful. So that's how I started. And then I share a lot on social media what I'm doing, and organically people just started reaching out to me left and right and asking for me to help them. They wanted to work with me. And so next thing you know, I'm an active agent. And I also do a lot of off-market stuff. And so clients, when the word gets out that you can find those pocket listings or off-market deals for investors, word spreads fast. So I get a lot of referrals from that as well. And now like I said, I'm mainly supporting out-of-state investors as clients. I do some retail stuff as well. And I do wholesale also.
So to give our kind of like, I guess, our audience kind of like an idea, a lot of agents just do retail and they don't do any, they don't work with investors or promote investing. I always think of it, it's like another way to get additional transactions. What would you ballpark like the number of transactions you'll do that are related to the investment part of your business on the agent side in the next 12 months?
I'm bad with numbers. I don't really pay attention to it. I should,
Oh,
but
I have no way of verifying them anyway. So
I think I've done a couple million in the past few months. And again, mainly just investor clients. There's a couple retail in there, but I'm averaging about 3 transactions per month.
Okay. So for the people that are listening, that are agents, so just so you know, and you may not know this, the average agent sells less than 10 houses in a year. So a lot of agents are selling 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses. Successful ones are selling 30, 40. And of course, there's people who sell a lot more than that. But most people are selling under 10. So there's a lot of people out there that are thinking about investing in real estate. But beyond investing in real estate, helping other investors succeed, you're talking about doing 3 times what the average is for agents, or a good year for agents. Almost you're talking about it like it's passive. And it sounds like it kind of is, right?
I love how you analyzed me just now, because so yeah, I would say on market, I'm doing probably around 3 transactions per month average. And then I also do 1 or 2 off market deals per month as well. And my goal, anytime I get myself into something that consumes my time, I'm working on a way to make that go from an active income source to a passive income source. And I've become really big on outsourcing things that I'm not good at, I don't enjoy doing, or I just don't have the time to do, so that I can focus on higher producing outcomes. And that's both financially and just from a personal fulfillment standpoint. And so, yeah, I do have some agents that help me with all of the volume that I'm doing. I outsource a lot of my investment business as well. Like I have a property manager, I have a great contractor. So yeah, I do have a great team that supports me. I wouldn't be able to do all of those things on my own. But again, the point of anything for me is, here in a few years, if I want to go lay on the beach for an entire year, I'm going to do that. And so I have to always be thinking about that with all of the actions that I'm taking today, because whatever I do today is going to set me up to be on that beach in a few years. So
Next, I was going to circle back to, because like, the end in mind, again, we're going to start, back with kind of like your origin story, is like you had this epiphany moment that, hey, like, I don't love, my business life right now. I don't like, well, your career, however you want to define, what you were doing. And the change was, I want to get my time back. I want to have something that's more passive. And so you're in the process of building that. Now, every time I talk to somebody that's starting along this path and has had some success, I always ask the question, like, how many hours are you putting in per week? I want people to know the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah. And the reality is, as many as I want. So right now I do have passive income streams and I have active income streams. So I have a good balance. And I think that's important too, because it's not that I don't like working. I enjoy working. In fact, some days I work 12 hours. But yeah, I would say on average, I'm probably in the 30 to 50 hour range.
Yeah.
Again, some weeks are going to be higher, some are lower. That's one of the things that I enjoy about being my own boss is I get to decide my earning potential. I get to decide if I need a week to just take a break.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So what would you say, because a lot of our audience are people that are licensed agents, some of them haven't yet invested yet. What would you say to somebody who's running around showing buyers and sellers homes that hasn't started investing yet?
One of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to whether it's a flipper, a wholesaler, or a licensed agent is when you're out here working with other investors to help them grow their wealth, don't forget to build your own in the process. And I think it's really important, especially for active agents, if that's their only income stream that they have, what happens when you no longer have that? What happens when you're hurt or you need to go take care of a family member and you have to take time off? That income stops. So it's important to diversify your income and have other options available to you. And like you said, when you buy a few properties, like one property can change your life. It really
Yep.
can. Usually because it makes you want to buy more,
Yep.
but yeah, so even one property is better than none. And I think as agents, sometimes people forget like the power that you hold of having access to sellers. You're gonna come across some leads in your day to day when you're out going to a listing appointment or talking to a referral, and you're gonna find some leads that don't make sense to go on the market, right? Maybe they won't qualify for conventional lending. Maybe they need some work. And if you come across those deals, if you're taking one of those on and going through it and learning, you're getting to build your wealth, and you're also adding a skill set to your belt that you can use with your clients. So it's going to increase your active income because now you're not just a one-trick pony. You can help investors too. So that was a lot of tips.
That summarizes, like, this stuff really isn't that complicated. And you probably took like 75% of like the messaging that we, talk about on a week to week basis. And there's just, at the end of the day, we could keep going, but there's so many good reasons. There's more reasons, to do it than to not, whether it's to grow your active income, to build passive. The last thing I would kind of just add to that I think a lot of agents aren't thinking about, but that I view as a risk. I'm a real estate broker. I have 300 plus agents that are in my brokerage. One concern I have for the industry in general is just these companies like Zillow and Redfin and Compass that are Wall Street backed, have a ton of capital. They're taking market share from agents at the end of the day. And Zillow is Zillow is the one everybody talks about. I don't hate on Zillow. I think Zillow provides a crazy good product. If you want to know the value of your house in under 10 seconds, there's no better place to figure out what it might be worth. But these companies are looking to take a piece of the pie. Our industry, the real estate brokerage part of the industry, could look very different 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it will, but it could look very different. And if I'm an agent, I'd be very nervous about just like getting a fee for showing a buyer a house, getting a fee for listing a house, because I don't know that that income is going to look the same 10 years from now than it does today. And I think that's a huge business risk where it's like, if you own, a single family in Kansas City, like, okay, you get a locked in payment, rents are going to increase, the value is going to increase, your debt's going to get paid down. Like the future, the longer time goes on, the better position you're in. Whereas like if you're, churning and burning clients, I don't mean that in a bad way, just in the way, like if you're always running around, that payout down the line could be less. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just a control freak, but I like to have full control over like where my income's coming in, and just, you mentioned a lot of things about like leveraging out your time and just being smart and really building a business by design, instead of just kind of like, hey, running around with your chicken with your head cut off, like, hey, where can
I used to do that.
Well, it's really easy to do in real estate because there's always somebody else that wants to see a house. There's always somebody else that wants a valuation. Like it's a tough industry for a lot of people because you can spend a lot of time poorly.
Yes.
You can feel like you're working all day long, but yet not do a lot of income producing activities. So, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate you. You've done a lot in a very short period of time. I'm super interested to see kind of, where you're at in 3 to 4 years. One of the biggest things that you said that I think, rings true for somebody that hasn't done a deal yet is like, once you do one, you're going to want to do another. And in fact, you very rarely see somebody buy, an investment property and then say like, I never want to do this again. You really, I mean, have you experienced that a lot? Like,
No.
Like it's more like, oh, I wish I would have started this like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you're on the fence, at the end of the day, people talk about like taking action, but I truly think that like that really is in this case, like where you need to start. Don't overthink it and just get going. So if our listeners want to learn more about you, obviously, like if somebody wants to, get going and buy in your market, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I hang out on Instagram most of the time, and that's where the majority of my clients come from as well. I do
Yeah.
post a lot of videos. I've danced in a few. I never thought I would be making TikToks and stuff, but here we are.
Yeah.
But my handle is investing in your wealth. And if you have, listeners that are in Kansas City, I also run a local meetup for investors that is on the third Thursday of the month. And there's info about that on my Instagram too.
So I think the thing for people to think about, like if they're thinking about, reaching out to Mindy, is if you're in a high price market like ours where you're having difficulty cash flowing, markets like hers are great to get into. I know your market. I study a lot of markets, but I know your market because of the cash flow component to it. And she's in a market where like you don't get a lot of like crazy spikes and crazy crashes. It's very boring, but consistently cash flow positive. It has been for a long time. And there's a lot of great companies there and a lot of reasons to invest in that particular market. And the two things I would think about are the price point. You can get into a house, you can buy it for 100, 150, which if you're in a market like mine, that's more like 500, 550. And the other part is the tenant laws. And the other thing is just like the fact that you can BRRRR these.
Yeah.
So you want to work with a local expert on the ground in the market that you want to, do business in. So if you guys are thinking about even just learning about, another market, I would definitely reach out and just get some, ideas on whether it works for you. But yeah, Mindy, I want to thank you. I did find your Instagram handle, Investing in Your Wealth, and a lot of great stuff that you shared today. And guys, we'll be back again next week with another guest on the Agent Investor podcast. All right, guys, take action. Thank you.
Thank you.